It's a story so many of us have seen. A really bright, capable kid, someone who used to just love learning. And then, boom, they hit a wall. Suddenly, the homework isn't getting done, the grades are slipping, and it just looks like they've, well, given up. But what if the real reason isn't laziness at all? What if it's something way deeper? Today, let's unpack the hidden psychology behind why smart kids stop trying.
It's just so frustrating, right? And confusing. You can see all this potential in them, but the effort, it just vanishes into thin air. And here's the thing, all the research tells us that the reason is almost never what it looks like on the surface.
And this is the classic disconnect. We see the stuff on the surface, the procrastination, what we call laziness, but that's just the tiniest tip of the iceberg. There are decades of research that tell a totally different story. And that story, it doesn't start with a lack of effort. It starts with a crisis of belief. So, if we really want to get to the bottom of this, we've got to look inside their heads. Because here's the kicker, it's not really about how intelligent they are, it's all about what they believe about their intelligence. And that belief, well, it can turn into a massive barrier to their success. Okay, so the first big hurdle is something the psychologist Carol Dweck identified. She calls it a fixed mindset. And the idea is pretty simple. It's the belief that you're just born with a certain amount of smarts, and that's the end of the story. For a kid who's been told their whole life how smart they are, this way of thinking is a really dangerous trap. I mean, think about it. If smart is just who you are, what happens the first time you run into something that's actually hard?
Yeah, this is the twisted logic that kicks in. For a kid with a fixed mindset, having to try hard feels like a bad sign. It's like proof that you aren't a natural. So, when school gets tougher, and it always does, they're stuck with this awful choice. Do I try hard and risk proving I'm not the smart kid everyone thinks I am? Or do I just stop trying and protect that identity?
And this brings us to something that's, well, it's absolutely crucial. How we praise them matters a lot. When we say, you're so smart, we're actually feeding that dangerous, fixed mindset. But if we praise the process instead, things like, wow, I love how you kept trying different strategies to solve that, or hey, your hard work really paid off, we send a completely different signal. We're teaching them that success comes from stuff they can actually control, like their effort and their strategies, not from some magical built-in trait. Okay, so there's another really powerful internal barrier, and it's called learned helplessness. This idea comes from the psychologist Martin Seligman. Basically, it happens when a kid keeps failing or just feels like they have zero control over what happens to them at school. After a while, they just learn that trying harder doesn't actually change anything. And that leads to this really devastating conclusion. It's not about being lazy, not at all. It's a deep, profound feeling of being powerless. They've learned from their own experience that their effort is totally useless, that the whole game feels rigged against them. So what do? They just put down the controller and walk away. But look, these internal beliefs, they don't just pop up out of nowhere. It's so important to look beyond what's in their heads and look at the environment they're in. Because honestly, school itself often piles on these external pressures that can just systematically crush a kid's natural drive to learn. So research by folks like Edward Dacey shows something that's, well, it's pretty fascinating and kind of backwards from what you'd think. The very things we use to try and motivate kids, grades, stickers, all those rewards, can actually kill their intrinsic motivation. And that's the good stuff. That's the natural curiosity, the pure joy of learning just for the sake of it. Suddenly, the focus shifts from, hey, this is cool, to, okay, what's the bare minimum I need to do to get the A, right? When the whole system is built around these external controls, grades, deadlines, punishments, a kid's sense of their own control, their autonomy, it just withers away. The solution? We have to hand some of that control back by giving them choices, by encouraging their curiosity, and by letting them have a say in how they learn. We can reignite that internal fire that the system may have put out. And this loss of control, it usually comes with a partner, a really powerful fear of evaluation. Think about it. When every single assignment is being graded, when every little mistake gets a red mark, school stops being a place to learn and starts feeling like a place where you're constantly being judged. And that kind of constant pressure to perform, it can be absolutely paralyzing. And this really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? In that kind of high-pressure system, making a mistake feels like a public, humiliating failure. The alternative is to completely shift the focus. When we start emphasizing progress, not perfection, when we frame mistakes as just a normal, even crucial part of learning, we give kids the psychological freedom they need to try things, to explore, and yeah, even to fail without feeling ashamed. So, when you put all of this together, the internal beliefs and the external pressures, you start to see the real motivation equation. And you know what's almost never a part of that equation? Laziness. So yeah, the real culprits are rarely, if ever, laziness. What they really are is a combination of powerful psychological forces. We're talking about a deep-seated fear of making mistakes, where every test feels like a personal judgment. We're talking about a profound sense of helplessness, where it feels like nothing you do matters anyway. Add in the crushing weight of school and social pressure, and maybe the saddest part of all, a natural curiosity that's been basically starved to death by a rigid system. And this right here is the most important takeaway from all of this. When a smart kid stops trying, pushing them harder is like flooring it when your car is stuck in the mud. You're just going to dig yourself into a deeper hole. The real solution isn't more pressure, it's changing the conditions. It's all about rebuilding what we call psychological safety, creating an environment where it feels okay to try, where it's okay to make mistakes, and where they can just be a learner again. So what if we just shifted our whole approach? What if, instead of asking that question that's loaded with judgment, you know the one, why aren't you trying, we started asking a question that invites them to be a partner? Hey, what's getting in your way? Because at the end of the day, when a smart kid stops trying, they don't need another lecture. What they really need is an ally.